an introduction to 7 million years of hominin munching. And my name is Victoria Leo. My focus is, as a consultant, is on health and wellness. One of my degrees is in anthropology, which is the study of human beings. And my other degree is in psychology. So, 2 graduate degrees. I've taught anatomy and physiology. I've taught human evolution at the college level. I do a lot of workshops. My business right now is consulting and coaching for health and wellness, and that includes nutrition, weight loss, so many things that are relevant to what you're putting in your mouth, what you're choosing to eat. And there is so much really, really poor nutrition advice out there, designed by marketers who are trying to make a buck in this market-driven economy. Bless their hearts. But you're the one whose genuine health and longevity depends on truth. Somebody in the Bible said, listen to the truth because the truth will set you free. So this is my attempt to share some truthful information about what your ancestors really ate. Let's start 7 million years ago. The very first apes who started they had a mutation in their hip joints and various other places. So they started to be habitually bipedal, which means standing on 2 legs, right? And there used to be, a million years ago, back when I got my first undergraduate degree, mastodons were walking the earth. The idea was that our ancestors had an advantage in walking bipedally because they were out on the savannah, blah, 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 eating nuts and seeds. The reality is, and God bless the paleobotanists who have been able to find this out for us, among other people, our earliest ancestors, and we're talking Sahelanthropus and Orrorin, 2 genuses, generi, who may or may not be direct ancestors, but that's about the time when there were various mutations and experiments going on in being bipedal. Our ancestors were living in open woodland and forest. Damp, actually, it was kind of wet. So what were they eating? They were eating a lot of marsh plants, a lot of succulent green things. The Surgeon General telling us to eat salads 7 million years ago. That's what our ancestors were eating. And fruits and the buds and things that were quite nutritious with some protein, kind of easy on the teeth. And not leaves. Leaves are very hard to digest and there's very little nutrition in them. But things like fruit and buds and green shoots and stuff, really good stuff. Also, eating insects. Insects are a marvelous source of protein. And in areas of the world where other protein sources are scarce, human beings eat grasshoppers and so forth. Okay, so in case you were wondering, why do some cultures, have a tradition of eating, grasshoppers and so on, and cockroaches and whatever, and my ancestors didn't? Well, that's why. It's because your ancestors were living in the land of sheep and goats and things that were easy to, big sources of protein. Anyway, and beans and peas and so forth. So we started out eating greens, and when they were available, when they were in season, nuts and seeds. Now, think about these things. Is there a lot of fat in that? No. Is there a lot of sugar? Heck no. Is there a lot of what's known as umami, which is a taste that responds to the glutamate molecule. Okay, so umami, or that glutamate molecule, is why meat tastes good, why Parmesan cheese tastes good. Ooh. There is absolutely nothing in this world that you can't make delicious by putting Parmesan cheese on it. Brussels sprouts, anything. Anyway, and also things like carrot juice. If you want your kids to have vegetables, give them some carrot juice. Give them some vegetable juices, not fruit juice. Way too much sugar. But anyway, so we've got the glutamate molecule and we've got fat. Our ancestors needed to be rewarded for going after fat sources because their usual diet didn't have it. Now, nuts and seeds have some fat. Animal flesh has fat, but there's problems with that. You have to chase it, you have to kill it, you have to eat it, and it's not very good for you if you don't cook it. If you're a primate, anyway. So our ancestors, one of these ancestors, and we don't know when in our lineage it happened. It may have been 7 million years ago, 4 million years ago, 1 million, who knows? But relatively early on, there was a mutation. Somebody was born with a little fat sensor in their tongue. It was a new gene that came into being, and that was connected via a nerve to the pleasure center of this person's brain. And every time they ate fatty food, they felt, ooh, baby, baby. That person ate more fat. You need fat in your diet. Our cell walls are composed of fat. Okay. A lot of some other metabolic processes really depend on fat. Good quality fat, monounsaturated. Anyway, because this person got this ooh baby baby feeling, this pleasure center hit. Every time they ate fat, they ate more fat than normal. Their children got more fat in their diets, and they were healthier. And when you got kids and grandkids that are healthier, they're more likely to survive and to leave healthy grandchildren of their own. Over time, the whole population was full of people with fat sensors. So when our ancestors finally did, when the climate changed, it became drier, and we didn't have the forests to live in anymore. When we went out onto the savannah, and it wasn't, we weren't living out on the savannah full time. We couldn't, because we needed to sleep in trees, right? So we'd go out and we'd come back and we'd sleep in the trees. And remember, these are family groups of around 20 people, males and females and various children, and a few elders. Anyway, okay, so what are they eating when they moved out onto the savannah? In addition to greens, lots of greens, lots of plants, they started being able to eat nuts and seeds, dry country stuff, nuts and seeds, protein, more protein. Ooh, yay. Nuts and seeds, beans, peas, digging up tubers, starchy vegetables. And some starchy vegetables like yams and so on have a lot of really good nutrients in them. Okay, so we're eating plants. We're getting our protein from seeds and nuts and beans, and we're getting shots of fat from the nuts, right? Fast forward a little bit, and now we've got the Australopithecines, Australopithecus, various species. At this point, we're starting to use some tools, digging sticks to try to, get those tubers out of the ground, and eventually sharpen stones, things that already had an edge and, got banged to make them sharper so that we could slice up vegetables, make them easy to eat, pound some seeds and nuts to, get the meat inside, right? Get at more nutrition, protein, fat, but lots and lots of plants. Lots and lots of plants. It's still mostly plants, right? Fast forward a little bit further, we get to Homo erectus. Where were we living? Our ancestors were living in East Africa by lakes, right? So water plants, lots of water plants, lots of the kind of stuff you can pick up by the side of a river. Fish, protein, frogs and other little things that live around, and rivers near rivers. We needed a source of water, right? And we needed all these nice succulent, nice greens, lots of nice greens, and these sources of protein. Okay. Are we eating meat? No. Except if a group of somebody's come across an animal that's just been killed, and by the time of the late Australopithecines, Homo habilis, Homo erectus, at this point, we're at 1.5 million years, okay? We had some weapons, sharp stones thrown in a barrage, the same shoulder joint that allowed us to reach up and pick things, right? Being bipedal means that you've only got 2 feet focused on locomotion. You've got hands free, right? You can reach up and grab things. You can carry food, right, back to a central place. Humans share their food. This is probably one of the things that led to our great success. We don't just share food like our ape cousins do with immediate family, or males sharing food with females, for obvious reasons. later favors. But you had these larger family groups. Everybody pools their food. Everybody eats. Sharing means everybody does better, because you have a good week this week. Maybe you got a bad week next week. You're not going to starve, because the same people that you shared with today are going to share back with you at a later date. Okay, so we are at the 1.5 or so million years point. We've got well-developed sharing. We've got a way of chasing, some predators away from their kill, just long enough so we can get in there with our sharp tools, right? Our knives, for want of a better word, slice through the hide, because skin is really, really tough. Get through the hide, tear out some meat, and run like heck before the rest of the lion pride or leopard pride or hyena pride, whatever group of hyenas is called, before the rest of their buddies show up. Okay, so you have to get in there, slice some meat, and run back. Now, Homo erectus tamed fire for the first time in hominin history. We didn't have to climb up trees and pray that the leopards, who could climb trees, didn't find us. For the first time in history, 6 million years of fear and terror in the night. Right? Why are we afraid of the dark? Why are we afraid of the night? Long history. For the first time, we could sleep on the ground. And as long as somebody stayed up, and took in turns to stay up and feed the fire, if a predator came close, you take a faggot and you wave it, and the predators run away from fire. Okay? For the first time, we could be safe, and we could cook our food. There are 3 things that cooking your food does for you. The first thing that it does is it breaks down cellulose. It makes plants much more nutritious. You can extract a lot more of the nutrition from your plant food by cooking it. You can also make your meat, if you're going to put some of this, grabbed, scavenged meat into your stew pot, or, your kebab, right? You can cook your meat, which makes it safer. It also makes it digest better, okay? So you, the adults, are getting much better nutrition, 66% better nutrition. That's how much more nutrients, more protein, more everything that you're extracting from that food, calories. At this point in your life, in your history, our ancestors wanted calories. They desperately needed calories. Most of your ancestors, were killed by predators. But the ones that didn't, starved to death unless they, got a lucky or clever. So, all right, here we go. The other two populations that a cooked food saves is children, because you can have cooked food as softer food, right? They have better nutrition. Mother's milk is wonderful, but you can give them more protein. You can give them you can give them more nutrients, right? And even when they're weaned, it's so much better for them to have cooked food in terms of the nutrition. The other population that is saved by having cooked food are elders. People who've been, grinding, chewing their way through tough food, start losing their teeth. You got softer food, you got some mush. You can keep grandma and grandpa alive. The reason you want to keep grandma and grandpa alive is because they've got memory. In an age where you didn't have Wikipedia, you needed people who could remember which water holes never went dry in the deepest droughts that only come by every 20, 30 years. You need somebody who's old enough that they can remember. They have a larger storehouse of information. Keep the group alive. A group that can nourish their elders and keep that storehouse of information is a group that is more likely to survive the catastrophes of the natural world. Okay? So, at this point, we're starting to scavenge meat. We're starting to eat meat, cooked meat. But how much? Tiny, tiny amounts. Every once in a while, somebody would get this much meat. And they would eat it down. Yay, whoopee! The rest of the time, they're getting their protein from nuts and seeds. Now, it looks like even that small increase in protein consumption from scavenging dead animals gave our ancestors a 50% increase in brain size. Neurons, brain tissue is extremely hungry tissue. It burns up so many calories. If you're not eating enough, you're not getting enough protein, you're not getting enough calories, right? Enough carbs to burn also. You're not going to survive, right? So a brain makes you smarter, but it's also expensive. You're not getting too many miles per gallon with a big brain. So you have to use the brain to get more and better food. And cooking was enormously important, right? Now, remember, we're still not eating huge amounts of meat. Fast forward another million years. So we're at the maybe 500,000 year point. And our ancestors have started leaving Africa. We get to the 200,000 year point, and they are now Homo sapiens, right? Our very earliest ancestors. Homo sapiens starts to leave Africa and outsmarts the existing Homo erectus because Homo sapiens, much larger brain, another big increase in brain size. We were eating more protein. Now, were we whitey hunters, killing animals? No, we were snaring bunny rabbits. Our ancestors were not stupid. Pfeffer is a lot easier to catch. Put out a snare. You don't get killed doing it. Okay. So, fast forward, we start seeing our ancestors, they're still eating mostly vegetables, fresh greens, tubers, roasted this, chopped, kebabbed that, a huge variety of foods because we were eating seasonally. And it was probably mostly the women who were the experts on what's growing where, and so we were seasonally moving from the winter place to the summer place to the spring, the fall, based on being close to the places where specific little ecosystems where the best food was available. And we were starting to eat more seafood, because when we left Africa, it was along the coasts in India and in Asia, and then up rivers, water, because it's water and some great food, right? Lots of protein from the fish and the shellfish and all this kind of stuff. Okay, we started doing some hunting. The toolkit improved to the point where we could track and hunt animals, right? But again, we would, the hunters would come back and then share, a deer or whatever, or a pig or a wild goat or something, and everybody would have, some meat in the meal. And then they wouldn't have any meat for 3 or 4 or 5, 25 days, right? Because they were getting so much protein from peas and beans and nuts and seeds, which also were, good sources of fat, right? And fruits and all these kinds of things, right? Lots of the kind of stuff the Surgeon General wants us to eat right now. Small amounts of meat. So there are some nutritionists who say if you eat so that meat is a condiment, like a little dab of ketchup or something, you're doing great. Okay, nuts and seeds and stuff are okay, good. Beans and peas, eat tons of Beano, and nobody will ever know that you're on a high bean diet. Okay, anyway. So we're at the 200,000 mark. We're at the 100,000 mark, and we're still doing this. Occasional meat from hunting, cooked meat, and some of it gets stored so that you can have small amounts every other day for a couple of weeks, and then we get to a particular time in human history, referred to as the Pleistocene, the most intense part of the ice ages. There was another species of human cousin, Homo neanderthalensis, that speciated from Homo erectus at around 600,000 years ago. Big brained, like Homo sapiens. So they were the first big brains on this planet. And they moved into Europe, the Middle East and Europe, and sort of the inner continent areas long before Homo sapiens did. Okay, so they were in Europe, they were in the Middle East for a long, long time. Our ancestors found competition when they were trying to leave Africa as Homo sapiens. And for a while, we just couldn't. Our ancestors couldn't outcompete the Neanderthals. Stocky bodies, very strong, very muscular, and because of their build, they were better physically adapted to the cold than our ancestors were. Okay, so they were able to survive on the edge of glaciers in southern and central Europe as the glaciers, retreated and advanced and retreated and advanced over a period of 10,000 years, 50,000 years here. And at some point in this advance and retreat, the animals started getting bigger and they were referred to as megafauna, which is just a fancy Latin way of saying big animals. So that's where you had all these, giant herbivores, the big mammoths and mastodons, and so forth. Big things with antlers. Can't remember all their names, but megafauna. Okay. And the reason they got big is the same reason that the Neanderthals got short and stocky, is because it's an adaptation to the cold. There was also quite a bit of food, so you could support these big bodies. Anyway, so the Neanderthals became focused on big game hunting. Right? They were eating a high meat diet. Now, we're not talking all the day, every day. Right? They were like us. They were eating mostly plants, but they were eating one heck of a lot of meat because they did a lot of hunting, these big animals. Now, our ancestors eventually developed better hunting tools, and they were able to outcompete the Neanderthals for the animals. And they also, let's be honest here, there have been Neanderthal skeletons found with Homo sapiens, weapons in them. So our ancestors also slaughtered the Neanderthals, the first genocide on this planet. Anyway, so better toolkit. And the reason we survived when the Neanderthals went extinct, the reason they couldn't compete with us ultimately, is because we were smaller. We were just as smart as them. We had good hunting tools, and we were smaller. We could get by on 2,000 calories. They needed 3,500 per day. Simple. Not a very exciting explanation, but that's likely to be the unromantic truth. Okay, so our ancestors come into Europe, Middle East, big animals. And Central Asia too. Big animals, they started hunting too. How long did this lots of meat diet last? You ready? About 10,000 years. Maybe 5. Okay? Our ancestors have been on this planet for 7 million years. Short period of time, they were doing a lot of hunting, eating these, big animals. Now, this period did not last very long, because what happened? We were fruitful and multiplied. The Neanderthals were there. Everybody was killing these big animals. We drove them extinct. Our ancestors did not have any moderation. They were eating too much meat. They destroyed their food supply, kind of like our modern Homo sapiens, overfishing and destroying entire industries. Okay, so we were high on the hog, eating way too much mastodon flesh and deer and everything else. Okay, for a short period of time, they all died out. What did our ancestors do? So they go, oh my God, we're going to starve. He said, no, we're going to go back to doing what we were doing before we started, overindulging in steak. They went back to eating a mostly plant diet. Mostly plants. Same kinds of things. Grains. Hello, grain. Yeah. Why? Why? Actually, Jared Diamond, bless his heart. Don't read his most recent book. It's horrible. It's so inaccurate. Ooh, gives me the willies. But his first couple of books, especially Guns, Germs, and Steel, excellent book. He answers the question, why did Europeans end up conquering the world? And the answer seems to be that the most protein intensive, meaning nutritious, calorie dense food, plant foods, and the most easily domesticated animals were in the Middle East. So actually it wasn't, Europeans ended up conquering the world, but it was all the ancestral people of Iraq. Those were the clever people. And the people of the other people of the other cultures in the Middle East. Okay, they started intensive foraging 70,000 to 10,000 years ago. All right, and so lots and lots of plant food supplemented by animals and so forth. Until a lot of this plant food in the Middle East was grain. Emmer and einkorn were accidentally created something really cool when humans started experimenting. It created wheat, high protein. Now, if you're allergic to wheat gluten, the fact that there's all this gluten-free stuff is wonderful. If you're not allergic to wheat gluten, please don't go on a gluten-free diet. Most of those foods are way too high in sugar. They're very unhealthy. Gluten is a wonderful source of protein, unless you're allergic to it. Okay? If you've got a medical problem, by all means, stay away. And, by the way, I've got a cousin. Her name is Pat Brown, Browne. She's got a wonderful website called Gluten Free Around the World. Pat Brown with an E, Gluten Free Around the World. Okay. The rest of us who are not gluten sensitive, not gluten allergic, eat your gluten. Your ancestors discovered this wonderful stuff. Okay, so our ancestors started collecting, along with other things that they were collecting, wild grains, and they grind it and they make things from it, including beer. This is really cute. It's a really cute video called How Beer Saved the World. I think it's called How Beer Saved the World. Some of the later parts of it, I'm not so sure, but it is very possible that our ancestors decided to domesticate wheat and other grains because somebody accidentally produced beer and said, wow, this is cool. And for the next 10,000 years, people turned grain into beer as an easily stored, easily transported way of getting calories and getting some protein. We have better sources of protein. Oh, please don't go on a beer diet. Okay, so our ancestors started collecting wild grains, and that was when domestication got going. 2,000 years after we really started playing around with grains, we had the first domesticated wheat. And then, of course, the animals that were docile, herd-living, relatively docile animals that could be genetically manipulated into a domesticated species or subspecies. Okay, and at that point, we had the option of keeping our food close and then from this horticulture, actual domesticated agriculture, and so forth and so on over the last 5 to 10,000 years, depending on what part of the world we're talking about. Things got going in the Middle East, but there were something like 15 areas where plants and animals got domesticated. Okay, look at that whole history. For most of human history, we're eating greens, we're eating non-starchy, non-green vegetables, we're eating starchy, tubery things, and we're eating grains, and we're eating protein from beans, peas, all the legumes, right? Nuts and seeds, and small amounts of animal product, things like milk, and all the milk products. Some parts of the world where cattle or goats were domesticated. Again, there was a mutation, and that allowed adults to continue eating or consuming milk products into adulthood. Most of the world, lactose intolerance after childhood is normal. So anyway, slight digression. So dairy products, right? Small amounts, not huge amounts in general. Eggs, right? Chickens were domesticated in Southeast Asia, and that the idea of chicken domestication caught on really quickly, got passed around through trade routes to other parts of the world. So ducks were domesticated in Southeast Asia too. So what did our ancestors spend most of the 7 million years, including all of the last 20,000 years, the most recent 20,000 years? What has our body evolved to want, right? Plant food, and not raw. For the last 2 million years, we've been able to cook our food. Please continue doing so. Roasting, broiling, is always better than boiling, but please don't go on a raw food diet unless you really want to lose weight, because most of the, a lot of the food that you're eating just goes straight through you without you being able to absorb the nutrients. And if that's, it can be a really great way to lose weight. Our ancestors didn't want to do that. They were trying to stay alive, but it can be really good for you. Just don't be fanatical about it, please. Don't proselytize. Don't be fanatical about raw foods, because there really aren't, a 100% raw food eating plan is not actually nutritionally superior to cooking some things. Stay away from prepared foods, of course, but what our ancestors were eating is very close to a Mediterranean diet with with lots of fresh veggies. Okay, diets that say grains are evil are nonsensical. Reduce it, because since the development of intensive agriculture, like the last 5,000 years, we've been eating way too much grain. So back off on the grain products, but don't throw them out entirely, right? We've been eating grains, lots and lots and lots of veggies, beans and peas, some nuts and seeds, fruits, not fruit juices, please, way too much sugar. Okay, raw fruit, and popcorn. A bit of a joke. We need to have lots of fiber in our diet, soluble fiber and non-soluble fiber, for good digestive health. Okay? And that, my friends, is what our ancestors really ate. I'm Victoria Leo, and I look forward to seeing you in other broadcasts. I look forward to being of service to you through my company, Soaring Dragon, doing health coaching, life coaching, and hypnotherapy for deep deep issues, digging out, cleaning out deep issues. I'm the author of 5 books on health, including 101 healthy meals in 5 minutes or less for people like me who have better things to do with our time than cook. Hate to cook, don't want to do it, but I want to eat healthy. 5 minutes or less. 101 healthy meals in 5 minutes or less. And an introduction to meditation and visualization and cognitive restructuring called Take Back Your Lost Heart. A book for people who are struggling with depression, including seasonal depression, called Journey Out of SAD, S-A-D. And a wonderful book for kids called Sale, S-A-L-L-E, and the Alien Invasion. It's about creating a happy, multi-ethnic adoptive family. Most of the people who are buying it actually are buying it to help their kids in step-parent families. It's got a really cute alien, and it's got an ecological theme and thrown in there too. So enjoy, and I look forward to being of service to you again very soon.